Today I wanted to show you one of the most interesting small boats I've seen in a long time. This is the RS Pulse 63, and what makes it so interesting is that it was designed from the outset as an all-electric boat, and that gives it a number of significant advantages over a conventional boat that has been adapted with an electric outboard, for example. So let me show you through one or two of those design features whilst it's still waiting to go in the water. We are going to give it a full test, but let me talk you through some of those first of all. Now, immediately you can see it's got a very unusual hull shape. We call this a cathedral hull, and that's because it has this big arch in between the central hull and the two outriggers. So you can see it's a very deep, narrow central hull with then a tunnel down the sides and this small outrigger providing stability. And the idea of that is that you have a very narrow frontal area, which makes it very efficient through the water, both when it's planing and at displacement speed. And then you've got these outriggers that provide lift and stability. It also means you can get the battery in this very deep, narrow central section where it's as low as possible for a very low center of gravity, giving it more stability. And of course, because of those outriggers, you still get the same beam and plenty of deck space. Now, a few other features to look out for. It has been built to be as light as possible, so it uses a cord material with PET recycled bottles in there to give it a nice, strong, rigid structure, but very light too. So the boat and the tubes all together is only about 400 kilograms, with the rest of it, the battery and the motor, topping it up to around 800. Now, this is of course one of the key features, the electric motor. It is the RAD 40 electric drive, and as you can see, it's an extremely low profile design, so very compact. It means that you don't take up a lot of space in the boat, particularly when it's lifted. It also has a very powerful H-shield flux motor in there. It's sort of pancake shaped motor which keeps it very low, gives it plenty of torque. It is 40 kilowatts, which is equivalent to around about 60 horsepower. And it also has some very cool features, and one of those is the steering. So it's an all-electric steering system, fly-by-wire, and if we can see, it's just this bottom part of the leg that steers. So the top of the motor stays absolutely fixed, and this steers so far 180 degrees in either direction, giving it remarkable agility. It's almost like having a stern thruster rather than just a motor. And then looking further around it, we can see we've got these tapered tubes that just give it a certain amount of style, but it also means they're a little bit smaller diameter here, get fatter in the middle for maximum stability, and then thinner again up at the front to keep the weight down, give it a bit more of an aggressive stance. So that is the key things you need to know about the boat. Let's get in the water and give it a full sea trial. The first thing you notice with any electric boat is that slightly unnerving feeling of no noise at all. You don't really know if the boat is switched on. All I can see is that the electronics are all live, the light is on, so you have to assume we're good to go. But there's no idle, there's no exhaust, nothing at all. Now we have a fly-by-wire bespoke electric throttle. You just ease that out and push it forward. And now you can start to hear just a faint little whine from that RAD 40 drive system. And because of this unusual fly-by-wire steering system, you can't see the motor moving around at all, so you just have to feel for it and get used to it. Now, at this kind of speed, we can feel how easily that cathedral hull is pushing through the water. We've got just 650 RPM, and we're already doing 8 knots, so it's clearly gliding through the water very efficiently. But let's see what happens when we apply a bit more power. Wow, okay, that's quite a surprise. There is so much torque. One of the beauties of an electric motor is that it can develop maximum torque instantly from almost 0 RPM. So there's no hanging around waiting for the build-up. It just punches you in the guts straight away. So I've eased it back. Let's bring it back up to speed. Now here we are, we're doing 2,000 600 RPM or thereabouts. We're doing 25 kilometers an hour, so probably about 18 knots, I would say, and using 58 amps. But one of the things about this hull is how comfortable it is at all these different speeds. We're planing very comfortably at this speed, but still feels like it's not really trying. Let's wind it all the way up. Okay, now it's picking up. Okay, 37 kilometers an hour, 38 kilometers an hour. That's around about 21 knots. So pretty much flat out. We're doing 39, so it should do about 22, 23 knots. And sure enough, it is delivering on that promise. And at this speed, it's using about 120 amps. So we've got about 159 amp hours. So that should give us a range flat out at somewhere between sort of 25, 30 nautical miles. So pretty decent when you're really going for it. But most of the time, you'll be cruising at much slower speeds. And what they say is that at 10 knots, you should get around 60 nautical miles. At 15, about 40, and flat out at sort of 22, 23, it's around about that sort of 20, 25 nautical mile figure. So obviously it's not going to be as much as a petrol engine boat, but then you've got all the benefits of a very quiet, emissions-free cruising mode, and of course very cheap recharging, much cheaper than petrol. So let's have another little play with the hull, see how it goes. So we've got a bit of a wake coming up. This should be a good test of how well that cathedral hull copes in a wake. Very comfortable. It's quite sensitive to the steering. Just a little move can make quite a big difference. Whoa, it really does. And I think that's because you've got so much steering. You've got the 180 degrees if you want to. So it really does dive into the turns. But what you do notice is that cathedral hull does a great job of keeping the decks dry. You've got so much flare at the front there that no water came on at all. We've got another wake coming from a bigger boat up here. Let's punch into that, see how it goes. Slightly bigger one this time. Take it up to, here we go. Look at that, completely dry. So what you do notice is because of that, those outriggers, there's a bit more sort of side to side motion when you go over a wave. It will, woohoo, there we go. So you do get a little bit more side to side movement compared to a really slender, narrow, deep V mono hull. But you do get that big, stable platform and a very dry ride. One of the interesting characteristics of this motor is how quickly it can turn. Because you've got that 180 degree angle of steering, it will really pile into a corner, but the hull is designed to take it. And they have programmed the software so it'll reduce the revs a little bit to take advantage of that and make sure that it doesn't do anything too crazy, but it will still turn extremely quickly. And I'm just going to demonstrate that now. So take it up to speed. There we go. We're now doing probably about, okay, that's about 20 knots, and we're going to go hard, turn hard to port. Let's go. Whoa! That is pretty spectacular. You can see we turned in probably a boat's length, no more than that, and you can hear the motor, the electronics just limiting that power a little bit. But the hull took it just fine, the motor coped just fine, and so long as you and your passengers are aware, you'll be just fine too. But it does mean you can get out of a tight spot really quickly. Let's try that again to starboard. Take it up to speed. There we are, doing about 20 knots. And let's go this way. Whee! Look how tight that is. That is remarkable. The only other boat that I know that will do that is a Williams jet rib again, and that's because you've got the jet that you can steer really rapidly from side to side. But it's good to see that it can take it. And the other thing you can do is, because it's fly-by-wire steering, you can actually alter the resistance. So if you want it to be a little bit stiffer and firmer, then you can adjust that yourself too. Let's take a quick look around the boat. Now, a couple of interesting features. We've got this very squared off bow in front of us. The reason for that is because a lot of them are used as marina boats or sailing club boats, and it means you can nudge right up to another boat with that square bow. And because you've got an electric motor, you can go really, really slowly. Unlike a petrol boat, which only has idle speed, which puts quite a lot of pressure on, you can very gently just nudge up and hold it against the quay or another boat. We've got a big locker in there just for storing anchor or other bits and pieces. We've got combined handholds and cleats either side. You can spec this very much how you want. If you want different coloured tubes, different coloured seats, all of those things are up for grabs. We've got grab ropes along the sides. There is this fun little seat directly in front of the console, and you can see that's cut away to make a nice walkway down the side. Got grab rails either side of the seat, grab rails on the windscreen surround. The current, well, this particular boat, you can see, has got these twin jockey seats. You can have a bench, so that fills in the gap between them, so you can sit 2 or 3 people there. You can also get a full bench across the rear if you want to, more of a kind of leisure mode. This one has a very strong tow bracket on the back, again for towing boats or wakeboarders. You've got so much torque, it's a really effective towboat, whether that's water sports or more commercial. The helm position itself, we've got that rad wheel, the bespoke throttle that I mentioned earlier. You pull it out and then back to go into a stern, out and forward to go into drive. You've got the 2 trim buttons. We've also got the rad tag, which is a magnetic kill cord. So you can see that just locks into place and works like conventional kill cord. As soon as it pulls off, it kills the engine. We've got a VHF system, a Fusion sound, and a full Garmin screen that gives a readout of everything you need to know: speeds, the drive angle of the engine, or the motor, because you can't see where it is. You've got a rudder angle indicator effectively, and it will give you a real-time readout of the range in nautical miles and the range in time of battery remaining, as well as, of course, a depth readout, trim angle, RPM, amp use, and a percentage of the actual battery itself. So all the information you need at your fingertips. Well, we've been cruising around for about 45 minutes now. We've been doing a whole mix. We've been doing performance testing, action photography, cruising around at speed and at sort of slower cruising kind of consistency. And we've covered 10.9 nautical miles. We've still got 55% battery left. So all that playing, we've used just about 40%, and we've still got plenty left. So I know people are always concerned about the kind of range you get from the electric boat, but to be honest, the reality is it doesn't really affect you nearly as much as you think. Often when you're just using it as a day boat, you're not covering a huge number of miles, and there's certainly no danger of us getting anywhere near running out of battery. And the other joy is that if you've got a quick charger, this 63 kilowatt hour battery will charge in less than 2 hours on a quick charger, or you just plug it in overnight on your conventional marina berth and it'll all be done in 8 hours. And they say that the battery is rugged enough to survive its life at sea. It's all in a sealed compartment, and it should be able to recharge at least 2,000 times to 85%. So all these concerns about electric boats, I get it, I understand it, but when you use it in practice, it very rarely comes to that. Most of the time, you've got all that torque, you can do your water sports, you can cruise around, you've got the beauty of, well, as we're doing now, there's no noise at all, there's no smell, and it's a very pleasant experience. When you're going quicker, to be honest, there's not a huge amount of difference in refinement because the noise tends to be generated by the water going past the hull. But at this kind of speed, it really is a joy. Now, what about pricing? Well, it is a fair bit more expensive, as you'd expect. The drive and the battery add at least £40,000 to the cost. So the boat in total starts at about £80,000. You can get pretty much the same boat with a 50 horsepower petrol motor for about £40,000. But of course, what you also save when you go electric is the cost of refueling is a whole lot cheaper. There's very minimal servicing. You almost need nothing at all. It's sort of once a year you might need to change the anodes, and that's about it. So there are distinctive pros and cons, but if you want something that's quiet, sustainable, refined, no emissions at all at the source of the boat, then it's a very impressive piece of engineering.